Alright guys, show some Shadow Priest stuff. Very exciting. Let's see. Your your core kit here is all the same except Void Eruption now has a 1.5 minute cooldown. Um, so you'll do instant damage when you pop it and go into Void form for 20 or 15 seconds. And Void form was changed slightly. You still get the 20% increased spell damage, but it grants you an additional charge of Mind Blast and refreshes the cooldown on Mind Blast instead of um, reducing the cooldown of Mind Blast by like 1.5 seconds and granting you a little bit of haste. So a buff and a nerf at the same time. But yeah, I'm excited for this change because in BFA you could really just have Void form up like 99% of the time or whatever. So hopefully they'll tune this accordingly and make it a powerful ability while it is up. Um, Talents, Fortress of the Mind, still the same, but Death and Madness is new, and it replaced Shadowy Insight, which was how you got instant Mind Blast procs. But this is a good change for sure. So when you Shadow Word Death, you gain 7, or if they die within 6 seconds of using Shadow Word Death, you gain 73 insanity over 4 seconds, which is huge. And the cooldown of Shadow Word Death is reset. So awesome talent here. Unfurling Darkness is replacing Shadow Word Void, which is fine with me because Shadow Word Void was good, but just an extra Mind Blast or Mind Blast charge. So Unfurling after you use VT, your next one will be free. Very, very good for tab dotting and stuff, especially if you're running Misery. So put that up there and both dots go up, and then instantly you can put them up on another one. So yeah, great talent there. And I'll stick with that for now just because I can't show you Death and Madness. These aren't going to die, right? Body and Soul is still the same. Great for you and your group for getting around faster. In fact, this whole row is actually exactly the same as it is on live. Twist of Fate is still the same. Yeah, exactly the same as it is on live. Same with Misery, but instead of Dark Void here, we're getting Searing Nightmare, which is really, really cool. We need to build up some. Looks like getting a slight bit of lag there. So yeah, let's just build up some insanity, and I can show you that. Alright, so we'll let this Shadow Word Pain fall off. And now that we're at full insanity, I'll show you how this works. It's really simple. Okay, so yeah, like with this, what you want to do is tab VT, and then on your initial target, when you start Mind Searing, then you can Searing Nightmare, and it'll apply Shadow Word Pain to anything near it within 8 yards, is it? Yeah, it doesn't really say there. It just says around the target, but I think it's like 8 yards. So, and while you're channeling Mind Sear, you can cast this. It'll do instant damage, afflict everything with Shadow Word Pain, and then once they're already afflicted with Shadow Word Pain, if you press it again, it's going to do 185% increased damage. And you can only use it while you're channeling Mind Sear. So I'll list a macro for this in the description, and that makes it really nice. And I don't see any reason why you shouldn't use the macro because it reduces, action button bloat. or whatever. So yeah, VT, 3 targets here, and go back to our original target. We'll just throw a Mind Blast, get our Insanity up, and then once you Searing, and then hit Searing Nightmare, see it puts Shadow Word Pain on everything. So then you hit it, Shadow Word Pains everything, hit it again, and it does 185% increased damage. So very, very cool talent here. And basically all the macro does for me is just do this again. VT, there's 3. Get our sanity up. All it does is when I go to channel Mind Sear, if I press that same button again, it's just going to Searing Nightmare instead. So if I'm not casting or channeling Mind Sear, it's going to Mind Sear. If I'm already Mind Searing, it's going to cast this. So pretty easy. So Mind Sear and then cast that. And cast it again. So you know, right now with my current haste and all that, like I can get into Searing Nightmares during a Mind Sear. Very, very cool talent. I love this. I'm glad to see Dark Void going away because I didn't like it anyway. Your CC row is unchanged. So if you want a 30-second cooldown on your silence, take Last Word. For questing and stuff like that, or if you're in a group that lacks stuns, that doesn't have many stuns, Mind Bomb is really good. Replaces your fear, and you can AoE stun everything. So like right there, I casted on that, and it stunned all 3. So in that situation, you'd have a 45-second cooldown on your silence, 30-second cooldown on AoE stun. Or you can take Psychic Horror to have a single target stun on a 45-second cooldown, plus your fear baseline, plus a 45-second CD on silence. So yeah, if you're wanting more CC to chain together, then Psychic Horror can be really good. Auspicious Spirits, I think, well, I don't know if it's going to be the go-to or not. It has been for quite a while because it's been really powerful even after it got nerfed, you know, a couple of times. Right now I'm going with that. Psychic Link is still the same. Shadow Crash is new though. Shadow Crash in BFA has a 20-second recharge and only 1 charge of it. And it just does AoE damage. But now it has 3 charges and a 1-minute recharge time, and they generate 8 insanity. So, and they actually changed the functionality of it too. It's not just, you know, you hit it and it does AoE damage. You can use it that way, but it also has a secondary portion to it where if you Shadow Crash a lone target, it will hit them. The next one will do 25% increased damage, and then the third one will do 50% increased damage since it stacks up to 2 times. So if you're in a pack and you want to just AoE, you can use it that way. But, you know, if you want to use it single target, you can do that as well. So Shadow Crash here. You can see it was a 1266, but it was a crit. So it would have been about 600. The second one was like 715. And the third one's 945. So you can see that damage stacking up. So having that flexibility to use it as AoE or single target is amazing. Even though it has, you know, long recharge time, that's just great. You know, use it on trash and still have it available for the boss doing more damage. So yeah, I love that. And the macro, like I said, I'll list the macro for this as well in the description if you want it. All it's doing is taking away the targeting reticle and just casting it wherever your mouse is hovered over. So for newer Shadow Priests, you know, if you don't want to deal with that targeting reticle, see, we have a charge back up, so to show you what it's like by default. Yeah, so I just messed it up. But anyway, yeah, it's a lot like, we'll just use Mass Dispel here. It's a lot like Mass Dispel. Obviously, the radius is much, much less. But yeah, it's like Mass Dispel. When you hit the button, it's going to bring up this targeting reticle, and then you aim it where you want to go. But the macro just takes that away and just casts it wherever your mouse is, or wherever your mouse cursor is. So if you want that, it's there. Back to talents. Yeah, Damnation is replacing Lingering Insanity, which was, if I remember right, it was the talent that gave you like 1% haste, or it kept your haste for a certain amount of time after you exited Void Form, right? So now this is replacing it, and I love this change for, you know, cleaving and multi-target. And we'll go back to Misery here just to make it a little easier. So you can see the synergy here between these talents is really good with Unfurling, Misery, and Damnation. So Shadow Word Pain and VT, and then Instant Shadow Word Pain and VT, and then the third one, Instant Shadow Word Pain, VT, and Devouring Plague. So very cool on a 45-second cooldown. And it's extra good because Devouring Plague itself costs 50 Insanity, right? So for getting up your dots really quickly, this is a great talent. Not only because it's instant cast, but like I said, that 50 Insanity cost of Devouring Plague is pretty huge. So I love this. I'm glad it replaced Lingering Insanity. That was a boring talent. Mindbender is still the same as it was. Void Torrent. We'll see if that's a single target, you know, nuke that's going to be worth it at some point. Right now, I really love Damnation. But, you know, as we gain haste and stuff through the expansion, like, this may be more of a PvP thing or whatever, just so you don't have to cast quite as much. So you'll still have a single target nuke here that actually, you know, it generates 30 insanity over 4 seconds, which isn't a lot, but it's still sanity generation, right? So, and it does refresh all your dots on the target as well on a 45-second cooldown. So same cooldowns on those two. See how that works out. Ancient Madness is replacing Dark Ascension, I believe, which is cool. Or actually, I think Legacy of the Void was over here, and then Dark Ascension was in the middle. But either way, Dark Ascension's gone, and they're adding Ancient Madness, which was an Azerite trait, if I remember right. So yeah, you won't lose on that out on that trade if you want it. And this is especially good once, you know, we're start leveling, because if you can see here, now granted, keep in mind I'm eye level 99, and most of my tunes at max level coming into this expansion are 130 or above. So this tune is very undergeared, but you know, I think you can see my point. Like, my crit, since that's what this talent is about, is only at 15%. So gaining 30% crit during void form, even though it reduces by 2% every second, is really good, you know, because 15% crit for a Shadow Priest is super low, because crit and haste are so important, right? But my stats are really low, so that'll help with that, you know, discrepancy there in stats. Legacy of the Void, and keep in mind, no matter which of these you choose, your Void Form cooldown is going to be 1.5 minutes. But basically, the advantage to Legacy of the Void is that it doesn't have a duration. So I think this will be really good as you continue into the expansion. And once again, like we were talking about, your scaling goes up, your stats get higher, and whatnot. You'll be able to keep void form up for longer, and that's where this becomes good. Like right now, I can't keep it up very long when I have this talent, just because my stats don't allow for that. Right? You're draining insanity really fast. So even though you gain 1% haste every 2 seconds, um, it's tough at first if your stats are low, is the bottom line there. But it does also extend the Devouring Plague on all targets by 6 seconds. So, you know, that's another thing where when you're starting out, this isn't as good because you can't get very many DPs out on different targets because your insanity generation is bad for one, and two, uh, like the cost of Devouring Plague is really high. So getting more than maybe 2 DPs out, at least with my stats, is next to impossible, right? So the fact that it extends the duration of your DP, and gain 1% haste every 2 seconds, it's not enough to counteract the insanity draining so quickly. So I think this will get better and better as the expansion goes on. But for right now, I'm running this, gain that Azurite trait back, and Surrender to Madness. I obviously can't show you right now because if you don't kill your target within 25 seconds, you're gonna die. It's back to that. On BFA, it's you take 90% of your health or something like that. You don't actually die. Um, so now it's back to just dying, right? If your target doesn't die. Last 25 seconds, you do instant damage and activate Void Form, and the rest of it's still the same. Like you generate 100% more insanity and cast while moving. But yeah, it's back to you dying if you don't kill your target. So, and we'll look at PvP talents here. There are one or two that are missing, like Shadow Mania is gone, but Lasting Plague is here. Just because we're getting Devouring Plague back, this will extend the duration of that by 6 seconds. And Devouring Plague's damage is really good. Plus you're getting 50% of the damage it does as healing. So pretty good talent. We have Thought Steal in all of our specs, which is really cool. So 1.5 minute cooldown. Steal a spell and they can't cast it again for 20 seconds. So great for stopping CC chains for sure. And as a secondary on that, if you're unable to find a spell to steal, the cooldown is just reset. So that's kind of like a bonus, maybe if you misclick it or whatever, But the rest of the talents are the same. As far as my recommended build and what I'll be going with for leveling, I'm going to go Death and Madness because you're going to be constantly killing things. So this insanity generation is huge. Like you'll pretty much always have full insanity with this as long as you're, moving along quickly and killing things. I'm going to stick with Body and Soul for, helping myself, get around quicker and my group. I don't think I'll need intangibility for more consistent survivability, but if you feel like you do, that's always an option. And Sand Lane is more of a group utility thing. So you could, if you feel like your group needs more healing, then you could switch to that. But Body and Soul is what I'll go with. I'm going to stick with Misery for questing and leveling and stuff, and then when I get into a dungeon, I'm going to switch to Searing Nightmare, because I think that'll be great in that environment. But and if you're AoE pulling, like to level, then Searing Nightmare would be probably much better than Misery. But situational there, but I'm going to go with Misery until I get into dungeons. This one, I feel like Last Word will be the way to go, because you're going to have plenty of people probably stunning. Demon Hunters and Rogues and Windwalkers and all that. Like, you're going to have plenty of stuns going out, I feel like. So having a lower cooldown on your kick is really good. So these two, not as useful in most dungeons, at least until you get into a coordinated group, and then, you could pick these accordingly. So I'm going to go Auspicious Spirits for questing and stuff. And then once I get into groups, I'm going to go Shadow Crash. And the reason is I can use this for single target or AoE, but when you're out questing in the world, since it has a minimum range of 20 yards, when you dot all this stuff up, it's going to come running right to you, and you can't Shadow Crash because of that minimum range, right? So pretty useless when you're soloing. The one situation where you'd be able to pull that off is if you're running Mind Bomb, and when they get to you, you Mind Bomb, stun them, and then use your sprint to get away and then Shadow Crash on them. But, I mean, that's a lot more work than you really need to do when you're leveling. So I'm going to take Auspicious. Damnation, for obvious reasons. It's basically like Rip and Tear for a Feral. If you've ever played Feral Druid, they have a PvP talent called Rip and Tear, where it just instantly puts up all the bleeds on the target, and this does the same thing. Puts up your VT, your Shadow of Pain, and your DP free of cost, like I mentioned earlier. Great for cleaving, and I won't need Void Torrent, I don't feel like. I mean, it could be maybe more beneficial on like the few situations where you're running into one target, but I don't think it's worth taking that talent just for that situation, right? Like running into a rare or something, this would be better, but all around, I think this is the way to go. And I'll take Ancient Madness for the reasons I mentioned earlier. I may actually take Surrender to Madness when I'm out questing, just to mess around with it and see how worth it is. It depends on the density, right? Like if you have plenty of density and you're moving from mob to mob, just killing really quickly, then you get a lot of value out of this. But otherwise, I think Ancient Madness is just really great. And like I said earlier, I don't think that you'll be scaling well enough early on for this to really be worth it, but I could be wrong. I mean, like I said, I'm very undergeared compared to most players that have a geared Shadow Priest in BFA. So that's what I'll be going with, is this build right here, and then switching those talents accordingly, as I said. Let's go ahead and look at baseline stuff. You get Desperate Prayer as Shadow, which is great. Heal you for 25%, where you gain 25% max health, and then you instantly heal for that amount. 1.5 minute cooldown. It's great to have that. It's been around for quite a while, but I don't think Shadow had it in BFA. 5% stand, yeah, so like all this is still the same until you get here. You can get Mind Soothe at 52. So basically, if you want to run by, and this is just for newer Shadow Priest guys, like you just have to ignore this if you're a veteran. But for newer guys that haven't played it, and you want to like get by this mob, like let's say there's a wall over here, and then you have this mob. You don't want them to aggro, you just want to be able to run by. You could Mind Soothe them, and it reduces the range at which they will attack you. So I've never been a huge fan. I think the last time I used it was maybe in like Burning Crusade or maybe even vanilla. But yeah, it can be useful out in the world. You get that at 52. Um, at 54, you'll gain back the ability to remove things like pally bubbles and stuff because it adds that potency to it at 54. And then power infusion coming back is awesome. 25% haste for 20 seconds on a 2-minute cooldown. That's a great cooldown. And I'm happy that that's back. I wish we were getting it back sooner than level 58, but what are you going to do, right? I mean, at least we're getting it back, so that's super cool. DP is back, as I mentioned. Most of the rest of this is all the same except for Dark Thoughts. Very, very cool. So for each of the dots on your target, so VT, Shadowward Pain, and Devouring Plague would be 3 times 3 is 9. So 9% chance if you have all your dots up to trigger Dark Thought, and that increases your Mind Blast charges by 1, and it can be cast instantly. So taking the old, what the frick was it called? Shadowy Insight. So taking some of that functionality but adding to it. So increase your Mind Blast charges and you get the instant cast proc. But the cool part of it is you can instant cast that while channeling Mind Flayer or Mind Sear. That's the best part of this, honestly, because you don't need any stop casting macros, or you don't have to like stutter step or anything like that to use your instant Mind Blast proc. Let's see if we can get a proc here. It just instantly goes off while you're channeling, which is really awesome. I just used that charge like an idiot. So let's get another one. I mean, you kind of already get the point, right? But we'll just show it. So channeling, yeah, and it continues to channel even though you mind blasted. So this is awesome, man. I really like it. Focus wheels the same. Yeah, all the rest of this is all the same. So yeah, that's those are the changes for Shadow Priest so far. And I showed you my recommended build, at least what I'll be going with. But I'm not a Shadow Priest veteran, so don't take my word for it unless you agreed with my logic on why I was going with these things. But macros, as I said, for Shadow Crash and Searing Nightmare, I'll put in the description if you want those, so make sure to check them. Make your life easier, especially for newer Shadow Priests, but even for veterans. At least the Searing Nightmare one is really good. Shadow Crash, that's up to you because you may want the targeting reticle just to be more precise or to see, you know, if you're at the minimum range or within it and need to back off, right? So that one's, you know, hit or miss. But anyway, those are the changes. And I'll show just a tiny bit of gameplay and whatnot. And we'll get out of here. So I appreciate you guys watching. I hope you got something out of it. Let me know what you think of the changes, if you're going to play Shadow Priest, and all that. So looking forward to it, man. I think it's going to be a fun spec, and great job Blizzard with the rework, you know. Oh, one other thing. Figured I'd show you guys real quick since it was just added not too long ago. On realm selection, if you go to Torghast, you now have level 60 character creation. Alright, time to go out like a champ. Am I right? So, let's dot this guy. Pop Surrender to Madness. Spam some DPs. Of course, she's not even close to dying.